Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie. We're going to be continuing our conversation today related to autism spectrum disorder. As many of you know, this is Autism Month, and our parents, our families, our students, our community as a whole is oftentimes not necessarily baffled, but maybe at a loss in figuring out ways in which we can not only motivate our children, but how do we guide them, assist them, aid them in whatever way is necessary so that they too are living a balanced life. When I think about all the times that I was running all over the place, being this wild child, I often wondered if I was on some type of a spectrum. Now, I've never been diagnosed, but I will say that I can be a bit much from time to time. I think today, as we open up our conversation and dialogue with our guests, we'll have an opportunity to really explore what does it mean to have autism spectrum disorder. There is a wide range, a wide variety from ADD to ADHD to ODD to all of the DDs that are part of this process, even with Tourette's being a part of it, anxiety, temper tantrums. So many things manifest themselves at different ages and stages of development in all of our lives. But one of the things that we can learn and discover is how to give ourselves grace and space to grow, to be nurtured, and to be developed. Today, our guests will bring us some insightful information that will allow us to meet the needs of those who have the need the greatest. We'll be talking to Charlotte Avery, Dr. Tierney, Stacey Owens, and Carlos Scott. Let's bring everybody in because I believe today we're going to sit in that space and in that seat where we're actually able to have a very robust conversation and dialogue with individuals who are working with students and parents who are having to find their way through what it means to live with autism. Welcome, everyone, to A Balanced Life.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello. It's always great to see everyone. Let me tell you, since our last conversation related to autism, it really got me thinking, are we doing the best that we can to help people who live through this every day manage what they have to go through? And I want to start with Carlos. Carlos is our dad who is raising a teenage autistic son. Carlos, let me ask you this question. Share with the audience who you are, and then also, how are you raising a teenage boy? And what does that look like for you as a dad with an autistic son?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Jacquie, for having me. Yes, I'm Carlos Scott here in Atlanta. Professionally, I'm a PR marketing executive within Vision Marketing, Inc. And it is very challenging, to be perfectly honest, just trying to balance my son's schedule with his school because I'm a very hands-on father. I take him to school every day. I pick him up, and then I'm involved in all of his extracurricular activities. And at the same time, balancing my busy schedule, which as the country is now starting to pick back up, involves me getting back to traveling and having to be on set and having to, whatever the demands are for my schedule. And so I'm thankful to my circle, as they say. And, but yeah, nonetheless, there's still some challenges, but we face them head on every day.
So with your son growing and maturing, he's what age, 15, 16 now?
He just turned 16, February 18th. Yes.
Okay. So at 16, his needs are a lot different than when he was just becoming a teenager. As a father, how do you navigate and talk to him? I appreciate and respect the fact that you are a single parent dad, and that brings a whole new different set of nuances because you need to talk to your son about things that possibly his mom cannot talk to him about being a young boy.
Yes. For me, it's all about, I guess you would say, age appropriateness from a standpoint of from when he was 11 to now, our conversations, he's obviously into the girls, very into the girls. And just about because he has autism and he has like literally no filter. Sometimes he's very expressive about what's on his mind. I've talked to him about appropriateness and sometimes balancing. I don't want him to be a recluse and don't want him to, to not express himself, but just talking to him about, hey, you can't just walk up to someone and hug them. As you do dad or your relatives, It's just a simple hello, hi, I'm Isaiah. And so, and then other things, but it's all about as he's grown, our discussions have progressed, if you will.
I like what you say about as he has grown, because it means you're very attentive to who he is and what his needs are. Now, Charlotte Avery, as a mom, and you're raising girls and boys, whether your children are faced with autism, one of the things that I like about you is that you teach your children how to respect all people. Can you talk to us a little bit about what it looks like in the Avery home when you're teaching your children how to work with others who are differently abled, or to be their friends and to champion them when they're being bullied or being ostracized?
Yes, and that is a really great question. And so, we really, teach our children to treat each other, treat people the way that they want to be treated. And so one of the, I'm like the queen of acronyms. And so one of the acronyms that I use with my children, when it deals with people, when they're dealing with people with differences, I use the acronym of CARE. The C is for consider the other person. And if there are things that you don't know, then the A is ask. Ask that person, about themselves or what you can do for them. And the R is try to relate to who they are in their situation. And then one of the other things that, one of the best things that we can all do that I teach my children is the E, and that's to educate yourself on what is going on in somebody's life. So if somebody says that they're autistic, then what I do is I tell my children, I say, well, look that up. Let's look up autism, and let's educate ourselves on what it means for a person to have autism, or any special need for that matter.
Right. I thank you for sharing that, because it's often lost. We have a tendency to, I want to phrase this correctly because I don't want y'all atting me. I don't want y'all texting me. I don't want y'all saying that I said the inappropriate thing. But I will say this, when it comes to how others raise their children, teaching children how to be, as Carlos said, appropriate, how to use the correct words, how to identify and engage a child who is different can mean a lot to an individual who is in such a big school, a wide space, in navigating their own situation and circumstances. Dr. Tierney, now you work with adults and young people. How are you helping others find that space to cope with what they face, especially when you learn for the first time that your child is not going to be all your hopes, plans, and dreams, and you have to totally shift your mindset and now settle into what your reality is in raising a child?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, in being a Christian-based coach, I always walk my clients right back to the word, and it just really comes down to the fact that God knows our plans, knows the plans. We don't always know exactly how God is moving, in the spaces that he invites us to, so while we may have had our expectation, that doesn't mean that things that are even more beautiful or even more blessed won't manifest. It may just come in a different package than what we were expecting. Often when you think about some of your biggest blessings, it often comes wrapped in a package that might look like a burden. It might look like something that is painful or unexpected. So the first thing that I do is help my clients to take the blinders off and say, hey, this might suck right now. It might not have come in the way that you ideally wanted it to. But that doesn't mean that it's still not good. That doesn't mean that Romans 8:28, all things work together for, our good, of those who love him and who are called, So the fact that you are the mother, the father, the auntie, the grandma, because it's not just, mom and dad, it takes a village, So if that child or that teenager is in your village, that means you have been called in some way to love, support, encourage, and be there for them, even if it might look a little different, than what we anticipated.
I am so loving this conversation. And when we come back after the break, we're going to talk a little bit about a day in the life. Let me just tell you, life doesn't have to be perfect to be wonderful. When we come back after the break.
Amber Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And we're having such a stimulating conversation with Carlos, Charlotte, and Dr. Tierney. We are talking all things autism spectrum disorder, because everyone is special and is in a space where they require love and desire love and want to be loved. And it's up to us as adults to set the tone, to give the narrative, to lay out the framework, if you will, for how our children view life and other people. Let me just tell you, in the day and times in which we live, being socially awkward is a way of life. All of us have been and are going through this pandemic. But for those who are diagnosed, it often gives us that space to say, let's really champion those individuals who need that extra push. Let's champion those parents who need someone to come alongside them and be in that space. And let's make certain that we are giving the respect and care that each person is due. I want to talk now for just a moment to Charlotte and engage her a little bit more. Charlotte, before we, went out for break, was sharing with us her acronym as it related to care. And you said something that was very important, which was your A, which was ask. How do you teach your children to ask without disrespecting? Because oftentimes it's a delicate cakewalk when you want to know what's wrong with the kid or you see something that's a little odd. How do you teach your children to show the respect in the asking, whether it's the child or the adult?
So, people say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And, I have some children who are very straightforward. And so it's something that I have to work on with them, with a few of my children often. But I try to teach them to ask questions that are appropriate. And then my husband, he always, when they want to know something, he always asks, is that a soup question? And what that really means is, are you asking because you really want to know, or are you just asking because you want to be nosy? I mean, because if you want to know, then once you find out, what are you going to do to support that person? How are you going to be a part of their world and all that? So I just teach them, listen, be gentle and be kind and ask people questions in the way that you would want them to be asked. But don't just ask because you're just nosy. Ask because it's something that you want to be able to relate to be able to educate yourself about. And can you support this person and what their need might be?
Wow. Supporting people in what their need might be. I love that. And shout out to Mr. Avery for, giving adults as well. Are we asking to be nosy? Or are we asking to gain knowledge so that way we can do something constructive with the information that we currently have? Now, Charlotte, with your 7 little people, and you are now between 3 schools, elementary school, middle school, and high school. How do you navigate the things that your children bring to you when they're talking about their peers and they see someone being bullied who may be different? Give our parents some tips to help guide them in having constructive conversations with their own children.
So, one thing that's really interesting is even in having children in 3 different schools, people say, if you see something, say something. But our children, not just when I say ours, I'm not just talking about mine, I'm talking about universally. Children are not always apt to say something when they see something. And so, when my children see somebody being bullied, I tell them, it's not your job to break up a fight, but if there's an administrator or somebody close by, then tell them. Or if they see that somebody's being bullied, even if it's not physically, but verbally, then I say, you know what, so that you don't want to feel like you're a tattletale, then remove yourself from the situation and then go talk to a teacher or an administrator privately. So then it's not like, oh, well, I feel like I'm being a tattletale, or, Ariel's a tattletale or whatever, but, that they're really being able, having the tools to be able to support another person. And I have children who have been bullied. And so I always try to tell my children, you know what, I want our home to be a safe place where we can have an open conversation about these things, and not because they feel like I'm about to pack up my briefcase and put my heels on and go to school and deal with somebody, because they know I will do that from time to time, but because I want to be able to support them, because at the end of the day, we have to teach our children at home how to handle conflict outside the home.
You gave an excellent segue, because I was headed right down that direction when Charlotte Avery grabs her briefcase and she puts on her heels and her suit. And literally, this is what I say: Charlotte Avery is now suited and booted and on her way to the school. You mentioned something that I'm almost certain that most parents don't know how to cope with or deal with when their own kids are being bullied. When is the right time for a parent to ask for a conference with another parent regarding their own children?
So for me, this is what I do. Once my children come home and they've told me something that has happened at school, number one, I believe that documentation is king. So one, I text or email the teacher and let them know the situation. I let them know, hey, this is a situation that my son or daughter came home with and they told me. And I would really appreciate it if you would look into it. I'm not telling them how to do their job, but what I am telling them is I'm giving them an opportunity to know what happened so that they can handle it before I then do have to get suited and booted to come to school. Now, if I don't like the teacher's response and how they handled it, then I just take it to the next level, because I believe in the chain of command also. I believe in policies and procedures. So once I've talked to the teacher and I don't like the response, then I then go to my child's counselor. And by then, like, I'm always CCing. So once I've talked to the teacher, now I'm talking to the counselor and I'm CCing the teacher. And then if I don't like how that plays out, then I take it to the principal, and I talk to the principal, I CC the counselor, and I CC the teacher, so that they know I'm following the chain of command, and so that the principal, because listen, before it gets to the principal, I've already done my due diligence and talking to whoever I needed to talk to before it went to the principal's office. And then by then, if all else fails and the principal hasn't responded properly and appropriately, the teacher hasn't, nor the counselor, now I'm going to the superintendent. And I think what happens is, as parents, we kind of get into this space where we're like, okay, these teachers are the educators, they're the administrators, so they might know more than me. But the reality of it is that we as parents have to protect our children. So we also have to know that there are proper ways and proper channels to do that, because as a parent, it's easy to get caught up in the emotion that somebody did or said something to my child or what have you. At that point, you really have to stop and pray. You have to take space and you have to say, okay, God, how do you want me to handle this in a proper and appropriate situation, so that I know that I'm not just using emotion, but I'm dealing with the facts? Because at the end of the day, it's not about the emotion of the situation, it's the facts about the situation, and knowing the school's policies and procedures on all things bullying, because schools have codes of conduct. They have, all these different things in place. And so you have to be able to do your research and know what you're getting into before you take that step to say, I'm coming to school. By the time I come to school, I've already done my due diligence. So it's on and popping.
Love that. On and popping. When we come back after the break, I want to talk to Stacey Owens, educator, administrator, and a person who gives her teachers a space so that they can manage all of the emotional things related to what Charlotte just talked about. Coming to school, having to deal with parents, meeting all of the guidelines. It's not for the faint of heart if you're in administration. When we come back after the break.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone. I want to bring into our conversation Stacey Owens. This is a space where we are literally saying we have to talk about it all. We're laying everything on the table because when it comes to our children and the education and the care that they need, let's just face it, everybody, our children spend more time away from us than with us. We drop them off in the morning. They come back in the afternoon. Literally, our kids are at school like they're working a 9-to-5 job. Stacey, how's it going?
It's going well.
Good to see you again. Let me tell you, you are, for me, one of the most respected voices in this space because the work that you do with parents, with your own teachers, and with your kids at your school, sometimes I want to say it's revolutionary because not all districts think about it or talk about it or are doing it, especially as a charter. Talk to us about how you're managing what you do with your teachers, yourself, and your students when it comes to children that may be on the spectrum.
So I think we have to make sure that at all times we are all in a good, safe, balanced space mentally. We have to be in control of our emotions so that when we are making these decisions, we are not making them from a place of a deficit space. And then I always tell our teachers that, I like to triangulate things because myself, I have a child. He's not autistic, but he is ADHD and a couple of other things. And school was always difficult for him. And so I had that experience as a parent and learning how to, like when Charlotte said, you get suited and booted. Imagine being a teacher having to get suited and booted to go have this conversation with a colleague. And so I learned from that space that we have to be balanced in terms of listening to each other, trusting each other, and just building collaborative relationships. Never assume that any of the individuals that's coming to the table is coming from a deficit space, that we all care about what's best for the child. Sometimes we just need help in finding that balance and being able to communicate with each other. And so I spent a lot of time making sure my teachers work from that space and trusting and building relationships with the parents and vice versa. Because it takes all three parties, the parent, the teacher, and the student to come together and be on the same page. So if you can balance that, it makes it so much more efficient for the well-being of the student.
When you think about the well-being of your students, now you mentioned coming from a deficit, and I want to highlight that word because oftentimes there's bias attached to it. And there are also microaggressions when things are said, oh, they come from such and such neighborhood. Oh, their parents aren't married. Oh, they live with their grandparents. Oh, the kind of work that she does. And so oftentimes the bias that's attached to that, Stacey, is that a deficit that should come into play when communication? Because can the child get what they need if the leader is biased about the individual that is taking care of the child?
We cannot have bias as part of the conversation. We have to have an awareness that we all carry some certain biases within us. So when I say we can't come from a space of deficit, it means that we have to think about what is good for the student, regardless of what the student brings to the table. It doesn't matter if you're from a single family home. It doesn't matter if you're in a poverty state. It doesn't matter. We're here for teaching and learning for all students. So it's one thing to have in our toolbox that information, but we cannot let that information be used in a way where it starts defining for us what kids can and cannot do. I've had some amazing students who were autistic, ADHD, whatever label that was given to them. And as long as we operated from the space that if we give them the support and the materials and the resources that they need, they can do just as well as other students at their ability level. So we have to treat all kids like they can learn and put systems and procedures and conversations in places that will operate for looking at each child as their unique self and then pulling out what's good within them.
When we talked to you a few weeks ago, you mentioned your own teachers having this space where they can go and have emotional wellness. When dealing with students who are different able, does that take more out of them as an individual? And how resilient do you find your teachers to be when they have to go from different levels of students' abilities in order to make the class effective for everyone?
It can be challenging if the teacher is not aware of her triggers or his triggers, or if the teacher is not aware of his or her biases. And so we spend a lot of time dealing with teacher as a self, because teachers are human. And so they come with themselves to the table. We deal with bettering you, because the better that you are, the better you'll be for the students that you serve. And then, yes, we do have a reset room, because I have a lot of high trauma students in my facility. And so I'm always telling my teachers, if you don't have your traumas worked out and you work in a high trauma population, it will make your traumas boil over. So we create a safe space for teachers to communicate what they're going through. I never tell a teacher to leave your issues or your traumas or your problems at the door, because that's not a true statement. You're going to carry it wherever you go. I just want you to carry it well. So as you're working with the students, you're not putting your hurts or your traumas into them, and you're not assuming theirs. So as we work with the special needs population or any population, the stronger you are as an individual, the more you can serve the individuals that you work with. And then we have the reset room, we have workout rooms, we have things like that in place, so that if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling out of balance, then on your planning time, go to the reset room and reset yourself. So when you come back after your break, we can continue to do great things for children.
Continue to do great things for children. I want Carlos to come into this conversation for a moment, because the dialogue, now I know that this is true, so y'all might prove me wrong in a few minutes, but let me just ask this. The conversations that teachers and administrators have with dads, is that different in the conversations that teachers and administrators have with moms? And then specifically for you, Carlos, do you approach male teachers and female teachers differently when you're dealing with your child's concerns related to school?
For me, to be perfectly honest, no. Whether you're a male teacher or a female teacher, I treat them all equally, as I think we should, because you don't want to get into biases and preferential treatment or different treatment based upon any kind of differences that a teacher may have. I just think them as teacher A and teacher B.
Teacher A and teacher B. Stacy, conversations with dads and moms, are they similar, the same? Who runs hot or colder?
I think the conversations are the same, but I would say from my experience, it depends on the home environment in terms of, are the parents on the same page in terms of what the needs of the child is? Because sometimes I can have conversations, or we'll have families who, when I find out that my child has an exceptionality, sometimes one person, it doesn't matter if it's the mom or dad, they may be on board with receiving that information and ready to move forward with putting plans in place. And the other may be in that position where they're not already accepting it yet. And so then the conversations are different, so I think you have to, whether it's girl, boy, cat, dog, whatever, we have to be able to assess the situation to determine where are you in being able to process the information that has been given to you. And then where are you in terms of understanding what has to happen so that we can make good decisions.
Thank you both for sharing that information, because as individuals, find themselves having to go to school, trying to discover who do they need to talk to. And I think we all have these different personality types when it comes to our children. Not that we don't love our kids equally, but there's some things that we know about our kids, and we expect our teachers and administrators to kind of be on the same page with us when it comes to dealing with them and relating to them, especially if you've seen them in the school for more than a year. You have some type of familiarity, with the needs of that child. My last question for Carlos, before I come to Stacy. Carlos, as you are navigating, as you said, your own busyness and your schedule in your life, you mentioned having a support system. For our parents who are discovering that they need to activate their village, what do you look for in support system for you and your son?
First of all, trust. I have to be able to trust this person with my child. And for me, I'm blessed to have family here. I have my baby sister. She's here. I have several cousins, aunts, uncles. Then I have a long-term friend of the family who's been keeping him since he was in diapers. And so having that village, and at one time his mother lived in Atlanta as well. And so, but having that village, I can't even put a price tag to it, because as my schedule kind of rampens up, I need to lean on them more often than not. And so, and because he has such a great relationship with them, and he trusts them, and he looks forward to spending time with them and or their kids, that brings comfort to me to know that my child is not just being watched over, but he's in a loving environment where they understand his differences, but they don't treat him any different than they treat the other children.
I appreciate you saying that. Stacey, for you, because you're in a school environment, how many people, I want to figure out how to phrase this correctly. How many people should a school allow, especially since children have a wide variety of people who come into their space, to be able to pick up their kid? What is like the limit and the range for that? Because just because a kid can have the village available, how many people does the school accept as viable individuals to be called upon during the course of the day to come help with the situation, or after school or before school?
So for us, we don't have a number per se attached to how many, can be in your village that can assist you. But we do have systems like we need for you to communicate, and it needs to be in documentation in terms of who's allowed to pick up, who's versed in this situation. So we build relationships with the parents first to say, when you're at work and if your child is in meltdown and I can't get to you, who's the better person to go to next? Then we set up that line of that trajectory of what to do if this can't happen. That comes through communication. And you can have 20 people in your village that you want to come pick up your child. As long as we know the order in which you want us to operate in, you know that you're giving us people who understand the needs of your child. And then if we're seeing when you come and pick your child up, or we're seeing that as we're working with Aunt so-and-so, she's not getting the best response, then we have that conversation with parents and say, this is what we're seeing, and we work together. I don't want to tell you who to put in your village, but I do want to give feedback to you in terms of if that person is providing some support that's for the forward progression of your child. So we're small, so I can be that connected with my families. But we want you to have that village, and we want to be part of that village.
Thank you both for sharing. When we come back after the break, as you can tell, the day in the life of a child requires everyone, all hands on deck, so that they can get the care that they need. When we're back after the break, I want to talk to Dr. Tierney, simply because when you're an adult and you're growing through the things that you need to grow through, now is a time for you to maybe sit with a coach and talk about how do you balance yourself as you live on the spectrum. When we're back after the break.
Time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
welcome back, everybody. I want to give a conversation now with Dr. Tierney because she and I both are in that coaching space, and we are working with adults who, when they were children, found out they were on the spectrum, and they have goals, dreams, and aspirations, and we want to make certain that we're giving them an opportunity to live out those dreams. Hey, Dr. Tierney.
Hey, Dr. Jackie.
How's it going?
Great. It's going great. Great conversations. Amazing.
Yeah, this conversation has me really thinking about our clients and the people that we work with on a regular basis. And I know that you've been a college professor and you work in that space. And then even as a coach, how do you navigate the young adult that is in that autism spectrum disorder space?
Well, one of the things that I try to do just kind of out the gate for my clients that are, on the spectrum is to encourage them. And like Miss Owens was just saying, once the school has really supported that student, to make sure that they know that they can accomplish anything that they want to, they're not limited, so making sure that that encouragement, is there. And also helping them to continue to understand that not everyone understands what their needs are, and so helping them to kind of navigate those situations, because once these children grow up, they are now in the workplace, and so helping them to navigate those office cultures, or if they're going to grad school, some of the campus, cultures that they may encounter, to know that some people don't always understand what autism is or how what that looks like, so helping them to be advocates for themselves in the same way that their parents or the schools were advocates for them when they were children.
Advocacy, that's one of my favorite A words, because it gives us the ability to really explore how do you not only advocate for yourself, but then have people around you who can advocate for you as well. Now, we both come out of the higher ed academic background, and it allows us to really speak to this particular issue for parents who are out there who are saying, my kid is getting ready to go to college, and I have always been there for them. I have been their sounding board, their voice of reason, but now I need to go to campus. I need to really see, now this is tricky. I'm gonna say that this is tricky because usually when a child turns 18, some laws are enacted where a child is not able to, have their parent involved. So parents want to make certain that they're talking to the dean of students, that they're talking to student government, that they have rapport with the college vice president and chair of those departments, so that somebody knows what's happening with the child. In your work on leveling up, you said something very key, that children or young adults learning how to advocate for themselves. When you think of what advocacy looks like, and you're already socially awkward, you don't, talk eye to eye, you walk with your head down. How do you assist a young adult with being able to build confidence as they're growing in their life?
Well, it begins with their own inner dialogue with themselves. So when they don't see that wherever they fall on the spectrum, when they don't see that as a hindrance, when they don't see it as a crutch, when they don't see it as a roadblock that says, okay, I can or I won't, instead they see that as I'm just different. I can do anything. I can accomplish all of the things that I want to accomplish. My dreams can come true. When they have that inner self-talk, then it impacts the way that they show up, so yeah, there may be some socially awkward things, or as Carlos just mentioned, his son right now has no filter, so there may be things that, are said, but when they have that inner confidence, it changes, how they interact with, others, even all the way to the point of being able to say, hey, I have autism. So these are some of the things that you might see, when they are meeting their new roommates, for the first time, or when they've been assigned to a group project, for the first time in their college course, being able to not just advocate for themselves, but also educate those that are around them, because oftentimes when we educate those that are around us, then we'll immediately get that compassion and that empathy and that sympathy that, that we need. So that's a piece that I encourage my clients to do, because mom and dad won't always be there, anymore to do it. On the flip side, in working with my clients who are not, on the spectrum or do not have, relatives or children that are on the spectrum. Sometimes in our conversations when, they may tell me about that quirky, coworker or, the different things that they see, I try to make that a teachable moment, to say, hey, kindness is always in order. We don't know what that, coworker may be going through. They may, fall on the spectrum. So it's always nice to give that person patience. It's always nice to show them support and encourage them, or, take a second, even if they blurted out something that wasn't necessarily in line with the culture of the company, take a moment to try to understand them, because just that little moment of just understanding them may go a long way, in terms of understanding what they're dealing with. And you may end up forging a relationship that you didn't even expect, when we take away those labels or stop calling him crazy or her weird or, just easily labeling someone, but just taking that second to understand them. So I try to work with my clients on both sides, those that are on the spectrum and those that are not on the spectrum, but maybe interacting with people on the spectrum, to really, really talk about that advocacy piece, that, just being patient and always just encouraging one another.
Having these nurturing environments give us that space to really identify and understand what's going on, not only in our lives, but the lives of other people. I want to bring Charlotte Avery in for just a second to have this conversation with us, because, as we're growing and we're maturing and, Charlotte, you're getting ready to cut some apron strings and sending your son, off to college. How have you helped him grow and mature, in being able to feel confident, feel responsible for his own life as he gets into that space, and then also being an advocate for others that he may meet in his sport and athletics?
So, as you know, my son is getting ready to graduate from high school, which is, it's a really bittersweet moment for all of us, but really for me, because I birthed him. But, I believe that one thing that I started doing with all of my children, like out of the womb when they could talk and things like that, I started teaching them, Bible verses and things like that. And one of the Bible verses that they can just quote, like at the drop of a dime, is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And one thing that Dr. Tierney said that really resonated with me is about the positive self-talk that our young people need to have in advocating for themselves. But that positive self-talk also starts with what we as parents start planting and putting in them when they're young, when they're just wee little people, right? And so, my kids, when they know, something might be hard, they know, well, it's hard, but I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I am the head and not the tail. Like, these are things that they know. But as I'm preparing my son to go to college, not only am I, reminding him of those things, but my conversations with him are a little bit different now, because now it's, okay, do you know how to use an ATM card? Do you know how to balance your money? Because, he'll buy candy all day. And I'm like, was that a wise purchase? It's looking at the things now from him, not just he's no longer a toddler, but now he's legally an adult. So it's making sure that I'm having the right conversation so that when he leaves our house, that he is confident in knowing not only can he do all things, but he can study hard. And also, too, I'm not only raising my son, when he was born, he was a baby and then he was a toddler, but I knew that he wasn't always going to be a boy. Now he's turning into a man. So, in making right choices and wise decisions, it's also about not only the decisions that he's making for himself, but what those decisions look like and how they will impact another person if God blesses him to be a husband and a father and all of those different things. So the conversations that I'm starting to have with him now are still some of the same conversations that I had with him before, but those conversations have ramped up now because I feel like I'm kind of grasping for straws and air, because I want to make sure that I know within myself that I have sown everything into him that I was supposed to give to him before he leaves the house. It doesn't mean that I'll get it right, but I have to know within myself that I've done that. And so my husband and I, we try to have these conversations with all of our children about their self-worth and all of these things. But even my son, he's had times on the basketball court where a coach has, made one of his teammates feel some kind of way about themselves. And he'll pull them to the side and be like, hey, You don't have to accept that. You don't have to take that. And you don't have to believe, what this coach or teacher said about you. And then he'll quote Bible verses back to them saying, hey, do you know about this scripture? You can do all things through Christ. And and my children are really good advocates for their peers. And so I really, really love that.
This is outstanding. I want to bring everybody back in before I go to reflections to have you all share with us some of your top tips that you have learned about yourself as an adult that you would share with parents as they are growing through the things that they're having to with their people in their lives, their children or their family members. Start with Stacy.
I would say my top tip would be stay in control of your emotions, even in challenging times.
Dr. Tierney.
I would definitely say to focus on how you say whatever it is that you say, because oftentimes people will listen to how you said it quicker than they will exactly what you said. So pay attention to that.
Carlos.
I'd say don't be afraid to apologize if you get it wrong. You're not going to always get it right, and I've had to learn that myself. And I think that has helped tremendously. Sometimes you just don't get it right, and it's not on purpose. You just didn't get it right. It's a learning curve.
And Charlotte Avery.
I would say that your support system matters, that you're not out here in a silo by yourself, that your support system matters, your tribe matters, and how you give support and how you receive support matters.
Thank you all for sharing your top tips. When we come back after the break, I am going to share my reflections and just see how well I've grown from the time that I was told a few things about myself when we're back after the break.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
Thank you, everybody, for watching today, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. There are a few words that I heard growing up that often caused me to wonder if I was okay as a child, and it really shaped who I became as an adult. Two things. She's such a social butterfly. I really wasn't certain how to take that growing up because I literally was all over the place. And that's probably why I was in gymnastics and why I played volleyball and why I ran track. And I did a whole host of things that allowed me to burn off the energy that I had. I was always the child who had to be in this mode of self-discovery. Who am I? Why am I here? What do I want my life to look like? I laugh at myself when people say, how many degrees do you have? And why are you back in school? let me just tell you, I have 5 degrees and I'm working on another one because I cannot be still. And I don't know where that falls anywhere in life. But what I will say, I have discovered how to make who I am work for me so that what I do can work for other people. Don't be discouraged in who you are as an individual. Love yourself. Love yourself. Love yourself, embrace who you are, and make the most out of life, the one that you've been given, because we only have one. Thank you all for watching A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.